This video is sponsored by thedeckofmany.com. My players killed one of the most powerful people in the kingdom by accident. Part 2. We DMs tend to create over-the-top and maddening campaigns for kicks. Sometimes it will happen that, instead of the campaigns being maddening for the players, it's the DM who is stumped by the players' sheer luck and savvy. That is exactly what happened the last time, when my players managed to outmaneuver one of the most powerful creatures against yours truly's foresight. Before watching this, make sure you watch part 1 if you haven't yet. The link is in the description below. The Scarlet Lady was dead. With a single stroke and not a small amount of luck, my players had upended my entire plan for the direction of the campaign. I was quick to learn that they had a knack for this. In a world specifically designed around my players having the ability to do anything they wanted, I quickly learned that what they really wanted was to break the status quo I had put in place. The second major instance of this came rapidly on the heels of the first. For the important and needed context, it should be known what became of the Scarlet Lady's remains. Knowing that she would be searched for in her last known area, they didn't want their new friends, the Centaurs, and their hidden village of Burkton to be threatened by any that might come snooping around. So, the party disposed of the Scarlet Lady in a manner that would guarantee she could never be found, and then took her carriage north, beyond the Purple Road, and to the lake, where they damaged it, stripped it of all its valuables, tore out the silk along its finery, and dumped it unceremoniously. When enemies came to call, it would look like a robbery, and they'd likely be searching the lake for her body. With this grim task finished, they continued on their way. The players, Arcus the Tiefling, Hemway the Mousefolk, and Rain the Tabaxi, after a few days, found themselves approaching the border of Estrin Astrua. The state of Estrin's border was lined with a cliff's edge that couldn't be passed, and the only way into Astrua would be through the small city of Weldstone. Therein lies their first major obstacle. Passage across the border was not free. It was in fact quite expensive. In an effort to gain some level of coin, they checked the guards' barracks for some local bounties, and found that a local loan shark was offering a lot of money just to have someone that owed them money to be found. It seemed like a good gig, so they went off to meet this man. His name was Manson, and it was immediately understood that he was no one's friend, certainly not theirs. The individual admitted to being a mob boss, to controlling things around here. The information alone was enough for the Tabaxi cleric of the party, Rain under Sharp Plains, to immediately refuse to take the job. The cleric had a strong set of morals on him, and they didn't allow the encouragement of any criminal enterprise that founded itself on the suffering of others. And this guy fit that bill to a T. But it wasn't enough to simply say no, for the cleric didn't turn away from such things. He enjoyed breaking them. Knowing that Manson intended to find the man that owed him money and likely injure the fellow, perhaps even kill him, he convinced the party to go immediately to the guard. Therein lies their second major obstacle. It was rapidly revealed to them that going after Manson would be a fool's errand. The captain of the guard, a decent man it seemed, informed them that Manson and his two competitors, Travis and Bianca, owned pretty much everything in town. They were the real power behind the mayor, and half the guards were in their pocket. No evidence had ever managed to be held against them, their holdings were locked up tight, and witnesses to their crimes always seemed to fall ill or disappear. It should be noted that these individuals had goons aplenty, strong individuals at their beck and call, and this town was originally designed to only be a stop-off to earn a little bank, an example of the corrupt nature of the land of Aprartia. But it was not to be left alone. This party, as I said before, did not accept the status quo. With the wizard tiefling Arcus smiling encouragingly from behind him, the cleric approached the captain of the guard and told him of a plan he'd come up with. The guard had never managed to gain proof or evidence of holdings, bribes, assets, anything. Nothing they could use to crush or take out Mason, Travis, or Bianca. So rather than searching for that evidence to try and bring them in, they were going to convince the mob bosses to bring the evidence themselves and turn themselves in. The plan was thus. Upon entering the city, they'd seen a local barracks outside that looked to be disused and in disarray. It had old banners on the outside, and it would do quite nicely. Step 1 was to write out, in elegant scrawl, a letter to each mob boss, Bianca, Travis, and Manson. The letter read as such: I wish to take claim to some of this city's holdings. Bring a detailed account of all assets and dealings to the barracks outside of town in 5 hours. You may bring a singular guard with you, for your own comfortability. My initial offer is for you to keep a total of 33% of your holdings. Consider this offer and which assets you would like to retain in the interim before we meet. The letter was signed, the Scarlet Lady. It's important to note that her name was particularly important to their plan. The concept of a hostile takeover of mob territory would, in most circumstances, result in a gang war. However, this was the Scarlet Lady. The Scarlet Lady's power, as mentioned in Part 1, was such that if any of them tried to resist, they would not wake up the next morning. They had little choice. Did they doubt the letter's authenticity? They couldn't afford to. They'd undoubtedly bring their strongest warriors as their guard, anticipating for it to be a trap. But just in case it was legitimate, they'd never show up to a meeting with the Scarlet Lady without bringing said information on their assets and dealings. As such, doubtful or otherwise, the mob boss's compliance was guaranteed. And to seal this as a solid fact, a square of fabric was placed with each letter. A strip of regal quality silk bearing the Scarlet Lady's insignia, stripped from her very carriage and entirely authentic. The letters were sent off. The second step was to use the aforementioned barracks outside of town. They used prestidigitation to make the banners fly the Scarlet Lady's insignia, and with a large collection of trustworthy guards that were not on the mob boss's payroll, they began setting things up. Arcus, the wizard tiefling, wore a cloak to hide his appearance and sat behind a screen they'd set up. A large cloth barrier so that only his silhouette could be seen. A table was set up, and nearby it, a druidic web trap was set in a likely spot. The old cells of the barracks were also covered in cloth, the place made to look like it had been cleaned up specifically for the Scarlet Lady's uses. Within those cells, guards lie in wait. The fateful 5 hours were over. Manson, Bianca, and Travis all approached the barracks. Beside them were 3 guards, one for each of them, and beside Bianca was a man yielding a sword that was encrusted with jewels. He bore himself as a man that knew how to use it. The other guards were steering clear of him, indicating that he was likely a formidable fighter. Ushered into the barracks, they saw the long, roomy interior, the cloth at the back with the silhouette of the Scarlet Lady. They slowly approached, ready for anything. Hemway, the mousefolk, waited under the desk, his small statue allowing him to remain out of sight. Rain, the Tabaxi cleric, stood nearby in smart clothes, arms behind his back, and seemingly at the beck and call of the Scarlet Lady. This too helped sell this, as it was known that the Scarlet Lady had a fancy for Tabaxi. "Do you have them?" Rain asked in a formal tone. Nervously, all 3 mob bosses revealed thick bonded folders, full of everything the guard would ever need to lock them away. Those 3 folders were placed on the table, and they waited. The trap sprung. The web suddenly wrapped around them, and a rapid cast of sleep managed to knock unconscious every single one of them, except the guard with the jeweled sword. He fought the spell, used his blade to tear his way out of the web, and stood up. But pieces of the web were still wrapped around him, and the web was flammable. Arcus ripped aside the cloth, threw a blast of fire at the guard, who screamed as fire engulfed him. He dropped his sword, which was immediately picked up by Rain, who then drove it forward. The blade struck true and pierced the guard through the chest. He fell dead. The guards came out, manacled the sleeping mob bosses, and took them away. The detailed reports of all their holdings were more than enough to put them away for a very, very long time. "Using the Scarlet Lady's name," the captain said, looking back at the party as the mob bosses were taken. "That probably wasn't smart. What'll you do if she finds out?" The Tabaxi looked to his companions, the mousefolk unable to stop himself grinning at the humor of it, and even Arcus, his usual stoic self, cracked a smile. The Tabaxi looked back with his own confident smile. "Oh, I think we'll be fine." The city had just been an example of corruption. They were supposed to use it to gain coin and step through into Astra richer for it, and wiser about the land of Vaeprartia and its corruption that seemed to seep into its very soil. But the status quo was not accepted, and rather than allowing it to stand, my players fought and liberated an entire city of mob rule. A feat I once again had not thought possible. But what were the consequences? Could they maintain the illusion they'd created with the Scarlet Lady's carriage as a simple robbery? What were the results of using her name? And how far would a story such as that spread in this corrupt land? Well, only I, as the DM, can answer that. And I don't think I will. Just yet. This video is sponsored by thedeckofmany.com. They make brilliant reference cards for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons that include monsters, weapons, conditions, and a deck of many things. Why carry books when you can bring cards to your campaign? They also have a series of animated spell cards up to level 5 for all of you casters out there. Basically, amazing art, amazing convenience, and an amazing deal. Their website is in the description below. Give them a visit and start buying all the cards today, just like me. Have your players ever taken down an entire city's crime syndicate in one brilliant move? Would you have done it differently? Comment your reactions and suggestions in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel All Things D&D. Our next video will be posted in 3 days, so stay tuned for more amazing Dungeons & Dragons content.